The smoke still lingered over the warehouse district hours after the main fire had been contained. Heavy 51 remained parked in the middle of the ruined industrial sector like a steel fortress surrounded by ash and flashing emergency lights. Firefighters moved across piles of debris while drones swept methodically overhead, their search beams cutting through drifting smoke. Hydraulic rigs groaned in the distance as exoframes lifted collapsed sections of concrete for investigators below. Captain Aaron Rourke had already been recalled to headquarters nearly 40 minutes earlier. Now his command interceptor sped through the crowded arteries of Crown City, while rain streaked across the windshield and neon reflections slid over the armored hood. He hated leaving an active scene, especially this one. The image of Crown Prince Alistair Rowan standing beside Heavy 51 kept replaying in his head. Royals did not casually visit disaster sites, not personally, not without layers of security and political theatre surrounding them. This had felt different, too quiet, too direct. The interceptor finally descended into the lower transit bay of CES headquarters. Unlike the polished executive levels above, the lower sections of headquarters still felt like a real fire command center. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee, hydraulic fluid, and wet turnout gear. Dispatchers moved between glowing tactical boards while exhausted firefighters sat along briefing benches reviewing incident footage or waiting for reassignment. Emergency alerts echoed periodically across the massive operations floor as giant holoscreens tracked fires, medical emergencies, riots, infrastructure failures, and storm activity across the megacity. Here CES still felt human, busy, loud, alive. Rourke stepped out of the interceptor and several personnel immediately noticed him. Word had already spread. A pair of engine captains glanced up from a situation board. "That's him," one muttered quietly. "The Prince talked to Station 51 directly?" Apparently. Rourke ignored them and continued deeper into the building. As he crossed the operations level, massive transparent displays showed live drone feeds from across the city. One section tracked firefighting deployments. Another monitored civil unrest spreading through outer sectors. Medical casualty numbers rolled steadily upward in one corner of the display before vanishing behind classified overlays. Too much activity for a normal night. A young administrative officer met him near the central elevator bank. "This way, Captain." Rourke nodded once. The elevator doors closed behind them, and the headquarters he recognized slowly disappeared. The higher the elevator climbed, the quieter everything became. The smell of smoke vanished first, then the noise. By the time they reached the executive levels, the building no longer resembled a fire department at all. The corridors were spotless white and black glass. Soft lighting reflected across polished floors without a single scuff mark visible anywhere. Silent security drones floated near the ceilings, while corporate aides walked calmly between offices carrying data slates instead of medical kits or breathing masks. Nobody hurried here, nobody looked tired. The upper floors felt more like the headquarters of a megacorporation than the command center of Crown Emergency Services. Rourke had always hated that. The administrative officer stopped beside a pair of towering black doors. "Chief Administrator Sarin is waiting." The doors slid open. A massive conference chamber overlooked the endless skyline of Crown City beyond reinforced glass walls. Lightning flickered silently in distant storm clouds while holographic tactical displays hovered above a long obsidian table. Chief Administrator Malik Sarin stood near the window with his hands folded behind his back. Tall, thin, dark-skinned. His uniform looked perfectly pressed despite the late hour, and sharp grey streaks cut through his close-cropped hair. He looked less like a firefighter and more like a senior government minister. Several administrators sat around the chamber reviewing reports from the warehouse incident. Most barely glanced up as Rourke entered. Sarin turned towards him slowly. "Captain Rourke." "Chief." Sarin gestured towards the chair across from the table. "Sit down." Rourke obeyed. For several seconds the room remained silent except for distant thunder outside. Then Sarin activated the holo display. The image of Crown Prince Alistair Rowan appeared instantly beside Station 51 personnel at the fire scene. Several administrators shifted uncomfortably. Rourke resisted the urge to sigh. Sarin spoke carefully. "Captain, would you care to explain why the heir to the crown was operating inside an unsecured industrial disaster zone alongside your personnel?" "I can't explain the prince's decision, sir," Rourke answered evenly. "He arrived unexpectedly." One administrator leaned forward slightly. Atlas 51 confirmed the Crown Prince initiated contact personally. At the mention of the station AI, Saren's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, the chief said quietly. Atlas provided a very thorough report. That got Rourke's attention. Saren began slowly pacing around the table. Do you understand how uncommon direct royal interaction with active CES crews actually is, Captain? Yes, sir. The royal family does not make surprise appearances at emergency scenes. Saren stopped briefly beside the skyline window. Especially after Sector 12. The room grew noticeably quieter. Nobody elaborated, nobody needed to. Sector 12 remained one of the Empire's most heavily classified disasters. Saren finally turned back towards him. And now we are informed that both you and firefighter Richard Hale held private conversations with the Crown Prince. Rourke remained silent. The chief studied him for a long moment before his tone softened slightly. I'm not accusing you of misconduct, Captain. Station 51 has one of the strongest operational records in the entire Crown Emergency Service. He leaned forward slightly against the table, but you need to understand something carefully. Lightning flashed beyond the glass walls behind him. When the Crown suddenly starts taking interest in firefighters, he paused, it usually means the Continuum believes trouble is coming. Back at the fire scene, Richard Hale stood beside heavy drone carrier 51, staring upward as massive support drones moved through the smoke overhead. For the first time since the explosion, his hands had finally stopped shaking. The conversation with Prince Rowan still replayed in his mind. You did your duty. Richard was not sure whether those words comforted him or terrified him. Atlas 51's voice echoed softly from nearby speakers mounted on the mobile command platform. Stress indicators reduced by 22%, Mr. Hale. Improvement acknowledged. Richard glanced upward. You monitor everybody that closely? Only when necessary. A nearby officer laughed quietly. Lieutenant Jace Torrin stepped down from the mobile command vehicle carrying a data slate under one arm. Unlike most firefighters on scene, Torrin wore the grey tactical uniform of CES Drone Operations Command. You should see Atlas during full-scale disasters, Torrin said. The AI practically tracks our heartbeats. I do track your heartbeats, Lieutenant. See, Torrin grinned. Richard managed a small laugh. Torrin motioned towards the massive command vehicle behind them. You want the tour? Richard hesitated. I'm probably not supposed to. Prince already spoke to you. Trust me, nobody's worried about protocol anymore. The rear section of Heavy 51 unfolded as they approached. Armoured panels separating to reveal an entire mobile coordination centre hidden inside the vehicle. Richard stopped in disbelief. Rows of holographic displays floated in mid-air while drone telemetry streamed across transparent screens. Tactical maps showed the entire district in real time, including firefighter positions, medical triage zones, utility failures, and atmospheric contamination readings. Above the command base ceiling, dozens of drone feeds operated simultaneously. Search drones, medical drones, suppression drones, heavy lift drones. Richard stared upward as one massive quadrotor unit carried a steel beam away from the collapsed structure. You run all this from one truck? Jace nodded. Heavy 51 is basically a portable war room. Emergency Coordination Platform, Atlas corrected immediately. Right, Portable Emergency Coordination War Room. Richard shook his head slowly. This is more advanced than military systems I've seen. Torrin and Atlas both went silent for half a second. That silence told Richard more than either intended. Finally, Atlas spoke. Modern emergencies increasingly overlap with planetary security concerns. Richard looked carefully between the drone feeds. And what exactly qualifies as a planetary security concern these days? Neither answered immediately. One of the monitors suddenly shifted to a live strategic overlay of the city. Multiple red markers briefly flashed across distant sectors before disappearing, Richard noticed. So that's not normal. Jace Torrin folded his arms. No, he admitted quietly, it's really not. Far above the city, the royal transports glided silently through protected area known as King's District 1. Inside the dimly lit cabin, Crown Prince Alistair Rowan stood beside the observation window, watching the megacity lights stretch endlessly outside the window. Across from him sat Director Lucien Carter, head of the Crown Intelligence Directorate. Vale was older than the prince by at least 20 years, though the sharpness in his pale eyes made him seem far younger. His uniform carried no decorations beyond a small silver crown insignia near the collar. That alone marked him as dangerous. "The reports from Sector 9 concern me," Carter said quietly. Alistair nodded once. "They concern me as well." Vale activated a classified holo-display between them. Fragments of surveillance footage flickered into view. Civil unrest, supply riots, unidentified armed groups moving through outer sectors, system outages, disappearing transports. Then came images from the warehouse fire. Heavy 51, station personnel, Richard Hale, Aaron Rourke. "The instability is spreading faster than projected," Carter said. "Several outer colonial systems have already stopped responding to central directives." Alistair crossed his arms, "And the king still believes tighter control will solve it." Carter remained silent. That silence itself was an answer. The prince stared back out across the city. "People trust CES," he said eventually, "more than the military, more than intelligence, more than the government." "Because firefighters arrive to save people," Vale replied, "not control them." Alistair nodded slowly. "That may become very important soon." Carter studied the prince carefully. "You believe conflict is unavoidable." "I believe," Alistair said quietly, "that something is already moving beneath the surface of the continuum." The transport continued forward through the storm-clouded streets far below. Station 51's drones still moved through smoke and fire, while the city carried on, unaware of the shadows slowly gathering around the crown itself.